What is going on, Nuggets Nation, NBA fans? I am Tom Leuthner. Welcome back into Nuggets Today. We have a few topics to cover with some rumors out in the air, some things that are not rumors, and that's this first topic. And that is the reunion between Denver and Tim Connelly is not going to happen, unfortunately. He did say that he is going to be staying in Minnesota because it feels like home. I believe he put it on X. And it's sad because you look at what he was able to do for not only Denver, but even Minnesota. This guy is amazing. He truly is. He's a mastermind when it comes to manipulating trades. I mean, again, he acquired Aaron Gordon for the Nuggets. You look at what he did. He got Rudy Gobert, and I know they said they gave up a haul for him, but they went to a Western Conference Finals with him. He was really a fantastic GM. He was able to draft Jokic. He drafted Jamal. He took the chance on Michael Porter Jr. He did everything Denver needed him to do. And he did everything that Minnesota needed him to do, even though they didn't win the finals. He was able to bring in Alexander Walker. He traded Karl Anthony Towns for Julius Randle and Dante. And I know some people say it's not an amazing move, but they were also a playoff team this year and competed. They got to play the Thunder, obviously, and were just not good enough to beat the Thunder. But most teams in the NBA weren't because they were a 68-win team. But this guy was truly an amazing GM, and it's a little sad to see that Denver will not have the reunion there, because I think if anybody was a mastermind and could have manipulated trades or any moves for Denver, it would have been Tim Connelly. But that's not happening. And we have to figure out who the GM is, because one thing that is going around right now is the fact that the Nuggets are favorites to land Trey Murphy from the New Orleans Pelicans. Now, I think it's an amazing move. Obviously, MPJ will have to be gone. We all know that, and I think that we all figure that in a trade like this. But you look at what he was able to do. He averaged 21, 5, and 4 on 45% shooting from the field, 36% from 3. Maybe not the best shooting splits, but he's 24 years old. Again, a trade for Trey Murphy would have to look like, right around, and you have to look at salaries and what would work. It would have to look like MPJ, Denver's 31 first, Jalen Pickett probably, and you would get Trey Murphy and Kelly Olynyk back. Now, do I think that's a terrible trade? Not at all. I think that Trey Murphy's he's fine. He would fit Denver. Denver has the highest odds to get him, and he'd be a great fit. You look at his highlights. This guy was letting threes fly from the logo. Not to say that MPJ wasn't, but he's also a fantastic defender at 6'9". He's great. He would fit Denver's system. He's 24 years old. He needs to develop a little bit, obviously, but at the same time, he looked developed enough to be an option for Denver that would be realistic and make sense for us to trade Michael Porter Jr., because most of the trades that we were going to do they don't make sense to trade MPJ. This is one that would make sense for his contract. Do I think New Orleans would bite on that and want to give in? Not really. There's probably going to be other teams that can outbid Denver, just as, every trade that could probably happen will be teams outbidding Denver because Denver doesn't have a lot of assets. But if it is, obviously, again, if it is possible, it'd be fantastic. I've seen some reports that it might have to include Christian Brown. Then I get a little skeptical just because of the injury history for Trey Murphy. But again, I would not be opposed to a deal that would include MPJ, Pickett, the 31 first, get him, get Olynyk, who could be a backup big, and then that solves two problems in one. And you have Deron Holmes. I'm not saying Olynyk's amazing. Maybe you're still able to go out and get either an MLE center, or you're able to get a minimum center, and you can still sign a guy like Seth, obviously, like somebody I've been talking about, who I'll continue to talk about, because I think he fits Denver's role fine. But if the Nuggets are not able to get Trey Murphy, which, like I said, it might be tougher to get him because obviously they would have to move, New Orleans would have to move on to somebody who's a little bit older, maybe the same kind of injury history. His contract's a lot more, and they're giving up Olynyk, so maybe that would make a difference because they get to give up a vet and get a guy like Jalen Pickett who they can develop. If they're not able to get Trey Murphy, I think that they pivot to another player on the Pelicans, and might be a little bit easier to get, and that is Herb Jones. I think, again, Herb Jones is the same kind of player as Trey. He's able to play amazing defense, which is what Denver needs. He's 6'7". He's not as good of a shooter when it comes to percentages. 30% from 3, which is not good at all. So that makes me a little bit nervous. But the trade may be easier because of his contract. So if you look back at Trey Murphy's contract, Trey Murphy's on a 4-year, $112 million contract. and you go and look at Herb Jones's contract. Herb Jones is only on a 4-year, $53 million contract. So let's say Sarich was to opt into his contract. Again, this is all speculation, and it's a little bit tougher strictly because I don't know if it would make sense for the Pelicans to do this unless they're going to look to get an insane amount of depth for these guys that they can now attempt to win a championship. I'm not saying these guys are going to win them a championship, but it would look like maybe Alfred Payne and Herb Jones in return for Zeke Naji, Dario Saric, Russell Westbrook, and Denver's 31 first. I know it sounds like you're giving up a lot, but realistically, the two players that you're getting back in return are better than just about everybody. Obviously, you can make the argument that maybe Alfred Payne's not better than Russ, but at the same time, you're getting two players who are actually going to play when a guy like Dario Saric isn't even going to get minutes because Denver doesn't want him to play, and you're paying him money if he opts back into that contract. So I do think that this trade is a lot better, and I think that it would be cheaper to get him than it would be Trey Murphy, and you're able to keep MPJ, and now you have a guy like Herb Jones off your bench with Payne Watson, with Julian Strawther. But if you're going to get Herb Jones, you might have to give one of those two guys up, which I don't know if I would do, strictly because Herb Jones also sort of scares me when it comes to his injury history. So I know these are two guys that we're talking about that are going to be a little injury prone and they may miss games here and there, or they might miss the entire season. Neither of them played that many games this year, which again makes me nervous. But at the same time, if you're trading for Trey Murphy, you're getting rid of MPJ, who's also injury prone. Again, he's a little bit older and the contract's going to kick in. He's making more. If you're trading for a guy like Herb Jones, you're giving up more players. And again, it might have to include one of your young guys like Julian Strawther, Payne Watson, maybe not Jalen Pickett because he might not be enough. But at the same time, you're getting a guy who's going to be injured but play way better defense than just about all of them except for maybe Watson. The last thing I want to talk about is the conversation between a new big man to back Jokic up. Let's say those trades don't happen. You don't get Kelly Olynyk. You don't get Herb Jones. You don't get Trey Murphy. This is a guy that Denver attempted to acquire at the trade deadline, and that is former NBA champion Chris Boucher. Now, is Chris Boucher an amazing backup big? Not at all. We all know that he's not. But at this point, Denver just needs any backup that will come in and be able to give Jokic a break. And I think Boucher does that. He can shoot a tiny bit. He doesn't have the best jump shot in the world, obviously. He's not a guy like Brook Lopez that's going to come in and knock down threes, or a guy like Bobby Portis who's going to let the three fly. But I think he is a good backup center for Jokic. He's not the worst defender in the world when it comes to playing the paint. Again, he could probably give you 6 and 6 if you need that off the bench for Jokic. But Denver's not asking for a center to come in and give you 15 and 12. Would that be great? 100% it would be great because you're backing up the best big in the NBA, giving them 15 and 12. But realistically, Denver just needs somebody who's capable to get in and play legitimate minutes and give you 6 and 6. Dario Saric was the backup center with DeAndre Jordan this year, and he was giving you 3 and 3. So 6 and 6 and good shooting splits, if we're able to get that within Boucher, are good numbers realistically. They're not amazing, but they're good enough to just get Jokic off the floor for a little bit and give you some points, give you some rebounds, play defense, do what you need to do. At the same time, again, you're able to score a little bit, and Jokic gets fresh legs before the fourth quarter. So again, these are some moves that are in the air right now. Denver is the betting favorites to get Trey Murphy right now. They are also the 5th betting favorites to get Herb Jones if that doesn't work out. Hopefully they're able to do one of these moves, and there's going to be some more moves I get onto tomorrow. But that's all I got for you guys today. I hope you have a great day. Enjoy this episode. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. I'll catch you guys tomorrow.